Welcome to 60 Skills. What is mental energy? Mental energy is the energy that comes from your consciousness. Working with mental energy allows you to think clearer, be more open and receptive to new ideas, improves your concentration, and improves your willpower as well. As such, it is one of the most important things you can learn to work with. An additional benefit of learning to work with mental energy is it allows you to look at things very clearly. This way, when you're emotionally overwhelmed or you're dealing with a difficult decision, being able to concentrate with mental energy and work with it directly allows you a much clearer head when addressing the problem. Additionally, for those people involved in office work, it helps with your ability to continue to use your mind throughout the day without getting very tired. So, I look forward to everyone joining me on this adventure as we learn how to work with mental energy. Welcome to 60 Skills. To practice working with mental energy, you will need a quiet place that allows you to concentrate and relax fully. So where you choose to do this is not particularly important, but it needs to be a place where you are fully relaxed. For those of you that do not have a separate practice room, as has been discussed in other coursework, simply find a corner or quiet space in your house where you know you will not be disturbed. And use this time period every day at the same time. This sets up a kind of energetic overlay in an area that turns it into a practice space that exists for a specific period of time in the day. So this may mean you need to get up a little earlier or stay up a little later. Aside from this, all you need are a pen, a notebook, and a timing device. I look forward to everyone joining me on this adventure. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss suspension of space. The most important characteristic of mental energy is that it is not bound by space. What does this mean? Quite simply put, when you are dealing with truly mental things and concepts, it is very hard to generate a picture describing them clearly. An example of this is morality. The concept of morality by itself doesn't really have a body or image to associate with it. If you're talking about the morality of a specific issue, like don't steal from other people, or the morality of theft, that's easy to do. You can build a picture of a man stealing from another man. But the concept of morality by itself does not really have this. So this is the most important characteristic of it. Now this is also very different from astral energy. Astral energy is bound by space, so you can build a picture of something on the astral level in your mind, but is not bound by time. Interestingly, mental energy is bound by time, but is not bound by space, which is the reason why you can very easily run out of mental energy and become mentally tired after you work on a math problem or work on writing something or spend a couple of hours caring for your child while they're sick. So this is an important thing to keep in mind. Mental energy suspends space. Astral energy suspends time. The combination of these two things later on will become very important when we learn how to work with akasha. But keep in mind, the defining characteristic of mental energy is the suspension of space. So what are examples of purely mental things? Well, the color blue. The color blue as a color, you can see it, but there's nothing that says the color blue has to be a certain shape. Likewise, the example of morality is a good one, and the issue of taxes are another thing. What are taxes exactly? Well, 500 years ago, it could be owing the government a pig. Okay? Now it's generally money. But for a lot of people, their money these days is a purely electronic transaction. So what exactly is the spatial parameter of that? It really doesn't have one. So these are all examples of the mental energy and its suspension of space. Where this becomes important later on is there's mental energy that your body generates, but they're mental aspects of many other energies out there, and these can become incredibly useful for us. Let us begin. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss the ability to concentrate and willpower. Interestingly enough, generation of mental energy largely requires one of two approaches, either through single-pointed concentration, which will be the topic of a different course, or in this case, the ability to open your mind. By generating space, this allows you to generate more mental energy, which is a curious contradiction because mental energy itself is not bound by space. This is one of the reasons why working with single-pointed focus exercises can be exhausting, even though it generates willpower, yet the releasing exercises and the opening of the mind generates more energy in terms of mental energy itself. Additionally, the approach we were taking here of opening mental space makes the mind more flexible. This is important, particularly when you are attempting to learn something or you're dealing with a complicated mental problem, such as doing some mathematics, maybe figuring out how to write a new passage in a book you're working on, or attempting to understand why an unruly child is doing what they're doing. This opening of mental space not only gives you more energy, but it gives you the flexibility to deal with problems. So it is also important to keep in mind that when training the mind, those are your two primary approaches. You can focus, which generates will, or you can relax and open, which generates energy. Now, this is something that people intuitively do throughout the day. And it's one of the reasons why teaching people how to work with mental energy is fairly easy. It's also why it is incredibly useful. Throughout the day, people tend to get tired, not only just for physical reasons, but because they've spent the day focusing and concentrating on things. That's why at the end of the day, everybody wants to relax. They want to sit on the couch, they want to go for a walk, they want to take a break. The great thing about learning how to work with mental energy is this is going to teach you how to generate more of this energy to work with, and by virtue of that, it's going to allow you to get a lot more done. And you're going to be able to do this in a much more time-efficient manner, which again, since mental energy is constrained by the element of time, as we talked about earlier, this is really, really valuable. Let us begin. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss mental energy and its connection to the body. Normally, in a person's day, they rotate through 3 different levels of reality many times. First, you've got the physical, this chair I'm sitting on. Second, you've got the astral, which is when you see something and it makes you happy, or you feel cold, or there's some other energetic-based sensation that takes place. The third of which deals with thinking about abstract concepts. Oh, I have to think about my taxes that are due next month. Or I have to work on a math problem. Those are just simple examples. Because of this, it's very easy to teach the concepts of physical or material, astral or energetic, and mental to most people, because these are things that they deal with multiple times throughout a given day. All we are really doing is applying a mechanic to that so people can work with these things consciously. What gets left out of the discussion of mental energy in many schools is its relationship to the body. Ultimately, at the end of the day, your vital energy or vital force powers your astral and by extension powers your mental. This is an important concept to keep in mind. If you're continually running out of mental energy, you may need to look at what's going on with yourself physically to determine why that's happening. Me personally, I smoked for many years. I quit smoking when it started to impact my level of mental energy. So, something to think about. Okay, how is mental energy directly related to the body? Simply put, you have multiple energetic bodies. You've got your physical body, what we're dealing with right here. You have your astral or energetic body, which, as we discussed in other coursework, is largely powered by breath and represents a somewhat idealized version of yourself. Third, you have your mental body or mental field. This is what contains your consciousness. Now, these three things fit like a glove within a glove within a glove, and they all actually exist in the same place at the same time. However, we're human beings. We're largely concrete thinkers. So we need a mechanism with which to isolate these different parts of ourselves so we can more easily work with them. Over time, you don't need that anymore, and you'll just be able to do all of this kind of work spontaneously on your own. But in the beginning, having a construct, if you will, of how these things fit together is incredibly important towards improving your ability to actually do the work. So we've got our material body, we've got our astral or energetic body, fair enough. Now we have our mental field or mental body. Well, since you're dealing with mental energy, you're dealing with something that isn't constrained by space. So for people who have the ability to see these things using clairvoyance, the mental body typically shows up as a kind of ball or field around somebody. In very rare cases, if someone's clairvoyance is exceptionally good, they can externally apply some parameters to this, but it usually comes across as a little foggy. And that's just a practical matter that doesn't have to do with the practice we're doing here. Just something for you to know. These three bodies are connected by a series of matrices or matrices. You have your physical astral matrix, which connects those two. Then you have your astral mental matrix, which connects your astral body to your mental body. And then beyond that, you have your mental akashic body that mental akashic matrix, that connects your mental and akashic bodies. So in this course, we're primarily going to be dealing with the mental body or mental field and its connection to the astral body via the astral mental or mental astral matrix. What are these matrices consisting of? How are they constructed? Well, one, when you're born, you have all of these things. As you get older, these matrices tend to get a little less flexible. On a very raw basis, ligaments and tendons become gradually finer, become fascia tissue, and then become subtle tissue. And these subtle tissues become gradually more and more refined, and this is what forms the matrices that hold the bodies together. So for this reason, anytime you train the body and you make the body more healthy, particularly involving whole body exercise that works with the fascia and ligaments and tendons in the body, your astral body, and by extension your mental body, get stronger. Specifically, working with these connective tissues improves the pathway by which various subtle energies flow from the purely physical to the purely mental and back again. So, if you can engage in regular exercise that trains these tissues, you're going to find your mental energy as a side effect improves as well. So keep in mind, the mental body is connected to the astral body via the mental astral or astral mental matrix. And the tissue this consists of is a highly refined version of ligament, tendon, and fascia tissue. Let us begin. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss astral versus mental wandering. What is mental wandering? Mental wandering is the act of consciously separating your mental field or mental body from your astral and physical body and projecting that consciousness someplace else. As a practical matter, this is something people do every night when they go to sleep. Now, remembering what happens when they do this is a separate issue and will be the topic of a different course. But just keep in mind that if you want to improve your ability to do this, keep a journal by your bed, and immediately upon awakening, whether that's to go to the bathroom or because you're getting up to start your day, start writing down what you remember. over the course of a month, you're going to be hard-pressed to keep it to one page. But let's get back to our original topic of discussion, astral versus mental wandering. Most people, when they have an out-of-body experience, have a mental-body separation. So it's actually mental wandering. This is an important concept to keep in mind because pop culture and New Age writings have confused the issue with astral wandering or astral travel. Astral travel, on the other hand, involves the separation of your astral body from your physical body. All right, what are the differences between the two, and why would I want to engage in one versus the other? First of all, mental wandering is the safest of the two and the most easily practiced. Most people with a few months' worth of work can engage in some kind of mental wandering. Astral travel or astral wandering, on the other hand, is a very different issue. Astral travel involves the conscious separation of the astral body from your physical body. This is dangerous on a number of levels. The mental body, being highly refined, has very little gravity, for lack of a better word, associated with it. Because of this, it grounds back to the body very carefully, which is why you can be having a dream about a far-off place, someone comes up to you, touches your shoulder, you're immediately back into yourself. No problem. The astral body, on the other hand, is constructed of breath. It has a much greater density than the mental body. Because of this, it does not ground back to the body nearly as efficiently. Also, and this is an important part to keep in mind, when you separate the astral body from the physical body, you are also largely separating your breathing. So when people engage in actual astral travel, their rate of respiration gets incredibly slow. Very, very, very slow. Usually less than 1 breath per minute. And their body will appear as if it is dead. The easiest way to tell if you're doing mental wandering versus astral wandering is when you come back to your body. If you've been mental wandering, you might be a little foggy, you might be a little spatially disoriented, but really no big deal. On the other hand, if you've engaged in astral travel, everything hurts because your body has essentially been in a state of suspended animation while it does this. This is also where things become dangerous. To engage in astral travel, you have to thin that connection between your astral body and your physical body a great deal in order for that to happen. The trouble is, the astral body does not necessarily ground back to the physical body. So if you're disturbed or have something happen to you while your astral body is separated, it could in fact stay separated, and you die. Now, why would I want to engage in astral travel versus mental travel? Well, with mental travel, you can go out, you can talk to other people, you can talk to other entities, you can explore your dreams, you can even explore other places. Depending on how well advanced it is, you can see things almost in real time. With your astral body, though, you can manipulate things on the other side to a limited degree. This you cannot do with your mental body. But by the same token, other things can manipulate that astral body. So, why would I want to do this? Well, for most people, there really isn't a need to do this at all. So, it's generally best avoided. And on the rare occasion most people experience this issue, it usually happens alongside a near-death experience. When someone is in an operating room and they're having major surgery, and during the surgery they report looking down on their body, that's usually a separation of the astral body, not the mental body. There are some exceptions. So these are the differences between mental wandering or mental travel and astral wandering or astral travel. The big takeaway is mental wandering is relatively easy to do and everybody does it on a daily basis when they sleep. Astral travel, on the other hand, is far more difficult to do on a practical matter, usually requires significant immersion in akasha and can have dangers of its own. As a result, it should largely be avoided. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss different ways to practice with mental energy. Mental energy has a variety of methods that can be used to work with it. Initially, you are going to need to do this as a standalone practice in your quiet practice place. But merely practicing with mental energy this way doesn't really result in much utility. You need to do this in order to build ability at it and sensitivity to energy. But ultimately, when you're working with mental energy, the goal should be, what can I do with this? Well, everyone has experienced those moments while studying for something where you just run out of mental energy and you just have to stop. Whether that's working on a math problem and you start to get that confusing kind of floating head thing, or whether you're writing a paper, or whether you're trying to figure out what to do with your schedule. By engaging in mental energy or engaging in mental breathing, as we just did, it's going to allow you to keep going. And this is really, really, really valuable. So, okay, if I'm working on a math problem or writing something or sitting there trying to figure out a schedule at work or for my family, that's really not that far removed from sitting quietly in your meditation space or meditation time, depending on what you're working with. However, there are a lot of other things we can do with this as well. So the first thing you can do is when you get tired and you're dealing with a mental problem, start mental breathing. Hey, you got more energy, you can work on the problem longer. Great. The next thing you can use mental energy for is to open that sphere of mental awareness to allow you to learn better. Again, this isn't that far removed from the example of practicing in your space or time, studying or dealing with a problem, and being in a classroom. You simply open your mental space up, and now it's easier for you to absorb the information being presented towards you. Now, you may not want to do this if you're not particularly interested in the topic, or if you think the teacher is a little nutty. But on the other hand, if you're trying to learn more efficiently in an engineering or mathematics class, or chemistry class, or something that involves a hard skill that is difficult to understand, say medical school, this is really valuable. It's going to allow you to absorb information much, much, much easier and much, much, much faster. Part of this involves removing internal resistance. Now, this isn't necessarily the same thing you would want to do when you're taking a test, but it is very effective for enhancing the learning process. So when you're in your classroom and you're studying what you're studying and the teacher is lecturing, mental breathe, open up that mental space, and you'll much easier gather that information into your mental field. There'll be less resistance. Super valuable. Okay, now these are all things that are done indoors and in kind of quiet places and are not very dynamic. Where else can I use this mental breathing technique? Well, an easy way to do this is when you go for a walk. If you want awareness of your environment and what's going on around you, opening up that mental space is an easy way to do that. This is particularly valuable if you're in a place you're not familiar with, or you're trying to learn more about where you're at, or you simply need enhanced awareness for where you are. Now, obviously, if this is an unpleasant place, you probably don't want to do this. Or you want to do this in a very limited capacity where you open that mental field up so you can grab a quick snapshot of what's happening around you, and then boom, bring it back in. And you do this by focusing on something. So mental breathing opens up, focusing closes the mental body down. Both of these are valuable depending upon what you're working with. And those single-pointed focus exercises, sometimes referred to as samadhi exercises, will be the purpose behind a separate course. So if you want to know more about your environment, you open that mental body up. Okay, That's a pretty good use for things, you know, maybe enjoy my walk a little bit more, get to know some interesting people in the park, make some interesting observations in nature. That's good. But these are all largely mental level effects. Fair enough. Well, remember earlier in the course how we talked about this connection between the body and your astral body and your mental body, and how your connective tissue and further refined versions of this connect these three things. Well, this is where we get into the energetic aspect of mental energy. When you're in nature, when you're in a clean space, when you're in a lovely place, and you open that mental body up and it's completely relaxed, what that also does is it enhances the movement of energy back down into the physical. This is one of many reasons why doctors are increasingly recommending things like nature walks, going for a walk through the woods. It's relaxing, but it's also a health practice. But if it's mental, how can it be a health practice? Well, it is by passively opening your mental body up, allowing for more energy to move from that mental level back down, reinforcing the physical level. So these are 4 very simple applications for mental energy that can have profound effects on your ability to relax, your cognition or ability to learn, your ability to think, and, hey, believe it or not, your ability to be healthier. And as always, this is the main point behind the coursework here. Learning to work with mental energy in this manner, in these 4 different ways, and there are many more, by the way, that you will discover on your own. These are just 4 very basic, easy ways to do this. Enhances your life and allows you to be more in charge of you. So I hope you've enjoyed this part of the course, and I look forward to discussing some more issues specific to mental energy in the next sections. Let us begin. Welcome to 60 Skills. We will now discuss different energies you can use in terms of mental energy. So far in the course, we have basically been discussing the inherent mental energy of your body. Okay. By opening up that mental field, we also discussed a little bit how on nature walks and going to the park and being out in your active environment, you can also experience the mental energy of the people and things around you. All right, what about meditatively and yogically and magically? Well, this is where the rubber really hits the road. Knowing how to mental breathe allows you to engage with different energies mentally. Okay, why is this important? Well, since the mental level of reality is a part of your day-to-day reality all around you, the energy associated with that reality is as well. And depending upon what you're specifically working with, those energies will be different as well. So on a basic level, you have the elemental energies: fire, water, air, earth, akasha if you use a 5-element system. By engaging mental breathing, you can contact and work with the mental energy of fire, air, water, earth, and akasha. But you're not limited to this. If you're into planetary magic, for example, you can work with the mental aspects of the energy of the planets. If you're into things like spirit magic or evocation, this allows you to work with the mental energy of other entities. This allows you to communicate with them. So working with mental energy allows you to consciously engage any number of things in your environment, any number of energies, and any number of different things out there that traditionally you've engaged with passively. When most people deal with different energies, they're largely dealing with the energetic, as we talked about in other coursework, or sensation nature of what that thing is. And this is valuable. This is where we get the astral from. In fact, in many ways, the astral is sensation. But that's not the only aspect of things. there's also the mental aspect of that thing. By learning how to engage mental energy and working with it consciously, now you can begin to separate the two out. And what you're going to find out is they're not always exactly the same thing. Particularly dealing with people, their emotions and what they're trying to mentally do can frequently be very different. So if you're a medical practitioner, for example, the ability to separate out, all right, what is this person trying to say to me, from their hysterical reaction caused by being in a lot of pain or being mentally out of sorts. This is a valuable skill. Listen, if you're simply a parent and you're dealing with small children, this is also really valuable. Because as we all know, sometimes it's really hard to figure out, particularly when kids are younger, what it is exactly is going on with them. So being able to look at the mental aspect separate from the astral aspect becomes extremely valuable on a number of levels. Okay, those are practical examples in the here and now. What else can I do with this? Well, as we've discussed earlier today in the practice portion, the easiest way to work with mental energy is to go from the vital or physical energy to the astral energy to its mental component, the suspension of space. Well, that process of transmutation does not end there. That mental energy can then be transformed into akasha, and that can then be transformed into non-dual light. So just as we can bring mental energy down into the physical by opening up our mental body and going for a walk through the forest, we can also transmute it back up. In that state of expanded consciousness, which we then convert, is where a lot of enlightenment type phenomenon occur. As such, this is incredibly valuable to our long-term development as human beings. Now, the 3 transformations, and interestingly enough, the 3 releases, will be separate coursework from this. But this is one of the reasons why learning to work with mental energy is incredibly valuable. And I will also leave you with this thought as well. For purposes of learning how to train mental energy and having a clear grasp of that, earlier in this coursework we went from vital energy, pore breathing, into astral energy, into mental energy. And this is the best way to learn how to practice to do this. However, as a practical matter, with enough time and enough practice and enough skill being developed at doing this, you can go directly to the mental level and expand from there without doing any of the other steps. In the beginning, this gets a little tricky and can result in vital energy getting trapped in the head, which is very uncomfortable. So don't do this initially. Follow that 3-part transformation from vital to astral to mental. When you have a really good handle on this, and you can do this at will, then you can skip to the end. And you can just expand mental energy on its own. At this point, this is when you can begin to play around with it a little bit and start interacting with your environment. Go to the zoo. Expand your mental energy. Place your mind on one of the animals in the zoo. Expand its mental energy. See what you pick up there. Interestingly enough, you can do this with trees as well and other plants. So at this point, working with mental energy allows you to engage many other energies. And by virtue of that, allows you to do a number of very interesting things. Ultimately, the point is enlightenment. But to get there, you need to be able to expand your mental energy as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this part of the course. Now we're going to come to the conclusion of the course and discuss some things that weren't covered in the course that you might want to think about. Let us begin.